Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Anan Hanna. I lead the Solutions Architect team here at Securematics. I would like to welcome you all and thank you for joining this presentation about the RUCKUS ICX portfolio. We will have Sean from RUCKUS who will talk about the whole portfolio of the switches that we thought it's really worth to share and inform you about all the updates. But before I hand it out to Sean, I just wanted to give like a brief introduction to our company, Securematics. We are a value-added distributor. We have like a dedicated team, and that's what makes us special from other disties. So we try to always provide value by having a dedicated account manager who will talk to you all the time, dedicated one of the SE members who will be answering your technical questions, jumping on calls with you and your end users, helping you with the design, helping you with the end-of-life products and giving the alternatives to that, giving the alternatives from the competitors and try to flip the bill of materials from the competitors to RUCKUS bill of material. So please feel free to reach out to us. We will share all our contact information on the slide deck here. And I also wanted to mention the other services that we do. We provide actually a demo pool equipment. We have a large demo pool with very refreshed and updated products. So feel free to reach out to us and request a demo units in case you don't have one. The access is really easy. Simply go to our website, securematics.com. There is on the tab, you can just click on the demo pool and request the model you want. It will show you a couple of options. So please feel free to do that if you haven't done so. And also wanted to mention here the partner portal login. So we have a really nice and updated partner portal where you can find our inventory, what we have in stock. You can also track your purchase order. You can see your codes. You can also see all the or download your codes from that partner portal. Also, the signing up for it is really easy through our website, and we can definitely create an account for you. Before I hand it out to Sean, I just wanted to mention a couple of the trainings that we have. So we have actually on the August 10 and 11, there will be an virtual ICX implementer. It's an instructor-led. It's an instructor-led webinar on the August 10th and 11th. We will have this today introduction to Smart Zone 6 in 3 cities, and we are very excited to have these series of training sessions. It's an in-person event. It will be held in San Diego, Greenville, South Carolina, and Austin, Texas, and on August and October and November. Beside that, we will have RUCKUS will have actually another webinar on September 8th for the Smart Zone, and there would be also a virtual fast track instructor-led on the beginning of October. We will provide these dates specifically at the end of the Sean's presentation, so please keep an eye on them. And of course, here I wanted to share our team who is very dedicated to help you with your request. We have, of course, Robbie, who is our business development manager for Ruckus. So feel free to reach out to him or any one of our team. Our sales team on the next slide will be showing. Can you next slide, please? Yes. So here's our sales team. And of course, I don't want to miss Bryant and Arnold, who have recently joined, and we are also working on adding them to the slides. From here, I would like to hand it over to you, Sean, to talk about the portfolio and the ICX products.
Okay, perfect. All right, should be good there.
Yes,
so thanks, Anan. Again, all right, good. So my name is Sean Hogston. I'm a distribution SE for North America. So today we're going to talk about just kind of an ICX portfolio overview. So I want to just kind of touch on the ICX family and give you just a couple, quick slides on each one as we go along. Not a whole lot of detail. Ports and speeds and feeds and that kind of stuff we can find on the website. And data sheets will give you all the kind of particulars because, I'm sure you would, like all vendors, right? Each family's got, a bunch of different port counts and speeds and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to bore everybody to death with that today. I just wanted to kind of give a highlight. So what we're going to talk about here, this is the kind of overall Ruckus portfolio. We're covering these and, different presentations like Anan had mentioned. We've got another Smart Zone one coming up. But today we're going to focus just on the switching line. So this is the ICX switching line. If you're not familiar with our switching line, originally, way back, it was Foundry Networks. Foundry was acquired by Brocade. At the time, Brocade was just doing fiber channel. They bought Foundry for the IP side. And then the ICX line is their fast iron line, which was the fixed config, 1U switches. So that's where that came through. So as we went through the different acquisitions and stuff with Brocade and then acquiring Ruckus Wireless and, through the heirs into CommScope days. So that's how we ended up where we are today. So these, switches are not new to the industry. They've been around for quite a while. And they're, a really stable base at this point. It's not something that we're just bringing out into the market, but a lot of people weren't aware of us having these. So, okay, so on the entry-level side, we'll talk about kind of first, and I should say that actually back up one slide. So we start down here on the access level at the 7150 line, and they'll move up, right? So as we go up family lines, just remember we're going up in power and things like that, and all the way up to the 7850s, which would be your kind of core level boxes, right? So that's the way the deck's laid out as well to just kind of flow through them. So on your access layer, 7150s are your entry level boxes. Again, multiple options for port with and without PoE. And probably one of the most popular in this line are the compact switches. So these guys come in a couple different flavors that I'll show on this slide. We've got an 8-porter, which is just a layer 2 only type of switch. And then you go up to a 12-port and also a 10-port, a 10ZP, which is your multi-gig. So in these compact switches, you're getting, fanless boxes. So they're very quiet. They're great for doing conference rooms or under desks or, just kind of expansion where you need a few extra ports. So you've got a lot of good options there to expand even into this multi-gig realm where you're getting, up to 10 gig copper ports and including up to 90 watts of power per port on those. So they'll let you expand some of the latest like Wi-Fi 6 APs, maybe in a place where they don't have the infrastructure typically for that. So you could put in just a compact switch as opposed, a rip and replace of an entire switch stack. And another one in that line is the 48ZP. The ZPs are typically the multi-gig switches in most of the families. In this particular ZP, you've got 16 ports of 1/2.5 gig, and those all include up to POH, 90 watts of power. And then you've got 32 ports of your normal triple speed with PoE plus. And you've also got 8 ports of SFP plus 10 gig for either stacking or uplinks, that kind of thing. And removable hot swap power supplies. So this is the only model in the 7150 line that has these removable power supplies. Actually, the only thing below like a 7400 series that has removable power supplies. And they did this basically as a checklist item for some of the RFPs that want an access level switch, but they have a requirement for either redundant power supplies or the ability to hot swap them or replace them if they fail. So that's why we brought the 48ZP into this family. All of the remaining switches in the 7100 family are just fixed configuration, no removable power supplies. And then we jump a little bit to the 7250s. These have been around a little bit longer actually than the 7150s. 24 and 48 port versions for both of those. They have also 8 of the 10 gig SFP plus ports. And then there's also an option that we'll show on the next screen is this external power shelf here. And the way this guy works, as you can see here, it's just a shelf that you can add additional PSUs into, and then they connect up to each switch. And that will allow you to increase the PoE budget. So if you've got these like high density environments, maybe a lot of voice over IP phones or access points, things like that, and the power budget that's in the switch itself isn't enough, since they're not redundant power supplies in the switch, you can use this external power shelf and power that up to 16 units. So it is, it's a good flexible option for the 7200 family. And then we jump to the 74s. Now you're getting into more of that kind of aggregation layer. You've got some multi-gig capabilities. You've got POH as well. And then you're getting removable power supplies, fans, and also additional expansion modules. So you can do like, 4 10 gig copper or fiber, or even a single 40 gig. And then on the back, you've got 2 modules as well. So your flexibility starts to really increase when you kind of get up into this realm. And then the latest family, actually before that, the 7450 also has this IPsec module. I always forget about this guy. So it's basically just a module that goes into one of these module slots on the box, and it allows you to do IPsec tunnels right from the switch stack. So if you have a need for that, you can terminate those to another switch stack with this module, or you could terminate them to a third-party VPN concentrator somewhere on the internet. So if you're doing remote office types of things and you want to do some tunnels back, you can do that by just adding this module into the switch. And then the 7550 is a new family line. It was out earlier this year, kind of the end of last year, beginning of this year. It got all kind of spread out with COVID restrictions, or I should say shortages. But it's a new family. It's designed as a kind of a replacement path or kind of upgrade from the 7450s. It will use the modules from the next family, the 7650s. It uses the same modules, so there's some good interoperability there for modules that we already have out in service and available. And we really increased the kind of line here. So we've got non-PoE switches, we've got your classic PoE, which is typical PoE plus switches, and then we've got a mid-range multi-gig type where you're getting higher PoE and a multi-gig, and even the capability to go up to 100 gig on that box. And then we've also got a kind of a fiber aggregation top of rack switch where you can go 24 ports of 10 gig, a couple ports of 100 gig. So you've got a lot of options in this 7550 family. And the only ones that I really wanted to highlight here were, of course, the multi-gig, right? So that's the big one. And this is just an example slide that shows the 24 and the 48 port and kind of how they're laid out. So you've got the 12 ports of what we call the multi-gig light. So it's up to 2.5 gigs. And then you've got 12 ports of full multi-gig where you're going up to 10 gigs on copper. And you've got POH as well. And then at the bottom, you've got 36 ports of the light version, and then the same 12 ports of the full 10 gig. And you've also got these 2 ports here that are 40 gig ports. You can also break them out as well, so that you can do 4x10 gig, or the bottom port will actually do 4x25. So it gives you a good bit of options there. And then here you've got your modular slot, right, where you can do your 1x100, 2x40, or 4x10, and even with MaxSec. So the 7550 line is really kind of increasing that mid-range that we have to cover a lot of those instances where this might even be, you know, a core product line, right, for the smaller businesses and things. And then the 7650s, again, a couple different versions. You've got a ZP in here as well that gives you some multi-gig and POH, regular PoE, and also a fiber version that's going to give you 10 gig, 1 and 10 gig over fiber. You still got the, you know, the redundant power supplies, additional expansion modules in the back. You can, you know, with these larger ones, you can do reversible airflow. So you could swap out power supplies and fans and do front to back or back to front, depending on your, you know, your implementation, right? If you're putting it in a data center where you've got hot and cold racks. So, so that's a good choice there. Then we have the 7750. This is kind of a getting to be a long in the tooth product line. The 7750 has been out for quite a while now. A few different versions of that. The 26Q, which is going to give you 26 ports of 40 gig, 48 ports of fiber, 48 ports of copper, and then you've also got a 6-port 40 gig module that's an option in the back of these guys, with your, you know, removable power supplies and fans and stuff. And then the last one in the list is the 7850. This is our newest high-end core, and specifically this 48C, which is actually due to ship, I believe, in about a week, the middle of July, I think it was. We should see this guy anytime now. So it kind of rounds out the family for the 7850s. You've got a 32Q here, but you're increasing that port size because they're 40/100 as opposed to just your normal, you know, 1040s. So you've also got a 48F, and then you've got the 48FS that gives you just a little bit more options on the security side. And then now with the copper, you're getting your 48 ports of copper as well as 8 ports of the 40/100 gig on the front side. So, so that guy will be out, like I said, just within the next couple of weeks to round out the 7850 line, and that will coincide with software release 9.0. I'll talk about in just a second. But this was just another slide that I had in here for the copper version. We've had a lot of requests for this, and it's been, you know, been waiting for quite a big release to get that guy finally out the door with all the delays and stuff that we've been having. So stacking wise, across all those families, you can stack 12 switches into a single stack in the same family. So you can't cross families, but you can cross different models and everything in that, you know, in one particular family, up to 12 units. We don't do any special cables or ports or things like that. Like, we use just standard Ethernet ports. They do have to be 10 gig or higher, depending on the switch models. So the switch you have to have the 10 gig ports enabled. We do offer some of the like 7150s where you can buy them with 1 gig ports enabled, and then you can upgrade them later on to 10 gig. So if you want to stack, you've got to make sure that you've got 10 gig enabled ports. So there is one switch in all the product families that doesn't stack, and that would be the little 8-port compact switch that I showed at the beginning, because that guy has 2 SFP ports, but they're just standard 1 gig ports. They don't have any ability for 10 gig. Therefore, he doesn't stack with anything else. He's just layer 2 only, you know, no routing or anything like that, no layer 3. So it's really just a low end entry level, you know, kind of port extender almost. You can also do distance stacking up to 10 kilometers between switches if you want to stack maybe like multiple buildings at a campus, all coming back to a central, and have them, you know, have them show up as a single stack. You can do that as well. And again, it's just over standard, you know, Ethernet, fiber, and copper DAC cables, depending on, you know, what kind of distances you're looking at for both of those. And this just kind of, I always include this to kind of show that, you know, once you stack these things together, you can start doing lag groups from the stack and back to like a core level, right? So if we've got these switches on the different floors and we've got them all together in a single stack, and we actually have fiber coming from each closet, we could take a jump from each one of these pairs back to a core somewhere, and that will all come back in as a single stack. So it gives you a little bit more redundancy, not only from floor to floor, but from each floor going back to the core itself. So, and then I mentioned the Fast Iron 9. So this is the latest software release that's about to drop just before the 7850 comes out. If you've never used our GUI before, in the current version and previous version, it's horrific. I don't recommend it at all. It just had not been updated in quite a while. This is kind of what it looks like. It's very, very rudimentary. You click on the links on the side and it basically just fills in these little charts. It's like, you know, my elementary school kid designed a website to manage something with it. It's really, really basic. So what we've been pushing for, we're finally getting in 9.0, is this new interface that's built right into the switches. So for the people that do like a web interface to manage with, you'll now have this GUI in 9.0. So it's something to take a look at. You know, it looks very much like what you'll see in a minute when we talk about managing with some of our other platforms. But the ability to look at the ports, what's in them, and tell if there's PoE on them, that kind of thing. Down here, you get immediately a PoE utilization graph that shows you what your budget is. You know, so that's always a big question, is how I'm doing on PoE budget when we start getting into some of these kind of high density environments. So it's just a huge improvement, not only from just the look, right? Obviously, you can see the difference between these two things. But the feature set and stuff in it, it's all just been enhanced. So I think it's going to be a really big improvement and probably open up the possibilities to some additional people taking a look at. I personally am a command line person, but it is nice to be able to just pull this thing up and see this graph and instantly tell, you know, what ports are up, what's down, what my PoE usage is, without having to kind of go in. You also have a button here that you can click and launch a remote CLI session from that interface. So that makes it nice as well. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that as something that we'll have here shortly with the new release. And then speaking of the management side, the wired and wireless integration. So I've got a few things in here. We'll first talk about smart zones. So smart zones are network controller that you typically associate with your access point manage. But in 5.0, we added the ability to manage the ICX switches. And then with each subsequent release since 5.0, we've been adding more and more features as you go along. This just kind of listed some of the initial key features, what, you know, fast iron version is required to run on the switches. They are all of our 7K switches, so all the ones that we just talked about, those families. But if you still have some of the legacy 6000 series switches, you know, the kind of Brocade days prior to us really separating them into Ruckus, the 6000 series switches are not supported. Those are all end of sale type boxes anyway. So it's nothing that we currently sell. So you can manage these now from the smart zone. And this, I did a screenshot and it kind of looks like I've got a list of the switching devices. On the left-hand side, you've got your normal menu, and this is a 5.2 release of smart zone. So just like you go to your access points, you can go to your switches, and then you've got a list of switches that are adopted and some basic information here at the top. And when you click on one of these, like I did, and click ports at the middle of the screen, it then shows you that interface in the front. It, you know, highlights the ones that have connectivity links. The red ones all don't have any kind of link. And then it will also show you the ports that are delivering PoE, which is nice. It doesn't give you the little graph like we saw, the little chart with how much your budget is right here in this screen. You've got to go somewhere else to find that. But it is nice to add this now into the same platform that's managing your wireless APs if you're running a smart zone. This is what it looks like. We also have the ability from 5.2.1 to be able to spin out a CLI session right from here. So if you're doing something in the smart zone interface and decide, you know, I know how to do this easier in the command line, you can, you know, click on it, say CLI session, and it'll pop up and log you right into the switch right from this window. Do whatever you need to do, and then you can close it back. So that's a nice addition. And then the next platform is Ruckus Cloud. You have the ability to manage some of the Ruckus switches, some of the 7000s I'll show in a second, not all of them. The Cloud's a little bit more limited on the family of switches that it supports. But here we have very similar thing. We go over to networking devices and we can either select Wi-Fi or switches, and then we've got a list here for whichever ones that you want. You click on one of these guys, and then it'll take you over to another page, which would give you here that actual switch. So you have a very similar, you know, port view on the front. It's got some basic alarms, and power levels, that kind of stuff. And then if you've added floor maps into the cloud, you can also drop on the location where the switch is located on the map, right? So that's more of just like a referencing. It's not any kind of locationing or any of that stuff, but it's just a reference view if you can't remember, where that particular switch is located, especially when you get this large campuses and stuff like that. And then, like I said, so the models that are supported in the cloud are going to be your 7150s, 75, 76, and 78. So these are the 4 platforms that are supported for the 7K series switches. So you're missing a couple, like I said, the 72, 74s, and the 77s are not supported, nor are there any plans to support those. So it's these 4 families going forward. And then you've got some specific versions that you need to be running, and if they upgrade, and they will replace that configuration on the switch. So just be aware of that when you go to run those. So I highly recommend, if you're going to manage these with clouds, do that in the beginning when you first get it out of the box and start setting it up, and then just manage it from there going forward. So, and then the last one I do put in here, I don't really consider this kind of management, but technically it is, and that's in Unleash. So if you're running some Unleash networks, we added the ability to add switches in there. You can add up to 8 switches. It's all the families, the whole 7000 series line. And the reason for that is it's actually using SNMP calls to pull this information. So this is I'll say a read only, but this is just an informational type of thing. You can't go in and make configuration changes when you're doing it with Unleash. It's more just looking at the interface and seeing things like, here again, PoE budget, stuff like that, ports used, that kind of stuff. So once you select a switch, you can go over and you can look at the ports and what's up and what's down. But it's just a monitoring type of setup as opposed to a full management setup like we saw with the Smart Zone and the cloud side of it. And then a couple other things for integration, that wired and wireless integration. Our SCI product is the analytics engine. We've now added the ability for the switches to push data into SCI. So when you're using Smart Zone to manage your switches, your data, and I'm talking about data like port speeds, ports up and downs, client traffic, all that kind of stuff that you would normally collect from the like the access points in your Wi-Fi network, you're then reporting all that information as well into the Smart Zone, which is feeding this over into SCI. And that allows you to run some different reports and things like that on the wired side traffic, not just your wireless. And you can use that same data explorer that we have in that engine to generate some of those full feature reports and statistics. And then very similar to that with Ruckus Analytics, if you're a Ruckus Analytics customer, we're adding in the ability to do the same thing on the switching side for analytics. So you can feed them either via Smart Zone or cloud if you're managing the ICX, and now pull those reports and different things that you can get in there. So, a big one is like the VLAN mismatch between AP and switches, right? So we had issues with that. If you don't get your VLAN assignments right, it'll see that and alert you for some of those insights. So that's another nice enhancement from the analytics side of it, is finally getting some reporting off of the wired side, right, as well. So that's a really quick run through, but what's next? Anan had mentioned this before. I wanted to put this up, so I'll leave this up here for a couple minutes. So if you want to grab a screenshot of this, but we've got several different things coming up. So to follow on to this, if you're kind of new to ICX, or even if you want a refresher, we've got the ICX 150 implementer course that I'll be delivering coming up here August 10th and 11th. It's a day and a half. We run about a half a day on the second day, not even really a full half a day. But basically it's your technical requirement, right? So the ICX 150 implementer is one of the technical accreditation classes that the partners need to do. So we have that available in a few different things. You can take it with like an education partner that's like a 3 or 4 day class that has a fee associated with it. You can go into the partner training site and just listen to the modules. or you can take it, and like one of the things that I do where it's the same content there, but I kind of condense that down to about a day and a half. It's a pretty high paced run through of all that content. But doing it instructor led, you have the ability to ask questions and explanations and things like that, as opposed to just sitting there listening to it on the website. So we're going to do another one of those, the 10th and 11th. We've got another webinar coming up. I'm going to skip down here. We've got another webinar coming up on September 8th that's more in depth about Smart Zone and kind of I talk through the different Smart Zone options, physical and virtual, and the differences between like the essentials and high scale, and how you can use Smart Zone to actually, expand your practice, especially if you're kind of looking at a managed service practice or maybe just a managed Wi-Fi practice, but how Smart Zone can help you make more money doing that. And then that's kind of a lead in. That webinar is an hour. That's a lead into then another one of the fast track virtual classes in October for the Smart Zone Administrator class. So that's another one of the technical accreditation requirements. We do the same kind of thing. It's a day and a half, pretty high paced class, and it's available as well, online if you want to just go through the modules. But I think the technical requirements are good for 3 years, if I remember correctly. I'd have to double check on the partner side. So if you haven't done one of those in the last few years, jump in when you see the emails come out for those. They'll be good to jump on and just get your, it's good to get your checkbox knocked out. So after each of those virtual classes, you can then go onto the website and take a little quiz that goes along with it. And then the big one that Anan had mentioned before, we want to kind of reiterate on, are these DISTI days. So we're finally getting the ability to go back and do some in-person events. So we haven't been, we haven't done that in a year and a half, pretty much. So we've put together 3 for the next quarter or so. The first one's going to kick off August 26th in San Diego. And then we'll do one in October down in Greenville, South Carolina. And then a final one November 16th in Austin, Texas. So what these are going to be is it's a one-day in-person event. It's hands-on. So we go through the new Smart Zone 6 interface. So if you haven't seen that yet, we just released Smart Zone 6.0 about a month ago. And it's pretty much a complete rewrite of the GUI and how that piece of it functions. So we spent a lot of time going through a lot of those changes. It's a pretty heavy slideware, and we've got some hands-on labs. So we'll have the equipment in the room, we'll have Smart Zones, we'll have ICX switches, access points, and basically as a partner, you just come with a laptop and like a mobile phone or something, and we'll have all the gear there for you that you can jump on. And we've got labs through the whole day. So we do a few modules, do some labs, do modules, labs, kind of break it up for the day. And get you some experience in Smart Zone. It's not a general how-to of Smart Zone itself, so just make sure you've got at least a little bit of familiarity with Smart Zone, but there's nothing that you can't follow along with, even if you don't have a whole lot of experience with Smart Zone. So I would definitely recommend jumping in on one of those, because we are going to limit the number of seats in those, just because we're going to have a limited amount of gear available, for them. So we're probably looking at around 20 attendees to each of those events. So once those emails come out, I would recommend, jumping on one of those pretty quick to secure a spot in that. There's no cost for those as well. It's just something that we're doing as part of the Ruckus Technical family is getting back into these kind of in-person events. And we'll look at maybe doing some of the training sessions again next year as well, in person. So if you've got any kind of requests that you would like for training that you want to see from us, you can just filter that up through your contacts at Securematics, and they'll let us, Anan and I, know, what we've got some requests for, and see if that's something that we can put together, either a virtual or an on-site. I know next year we're going to try to do a lot more of it on-site around the country. So if any of that stuff is of interest to you, then definitely let us know, and we'll see if we can get something put together for you if you have a specific topic in mind. So, and with that kind of ends the slide deck. We'll open it up to Q&A. That's all. Actually, I guess I can just kind of lead this up in case anybody wants to grab that stuff as well. But we'll open it up for any questions. Anything that you guys want to know? Do we have any questions in here? I was looking to see.
No questions yet, Sean, but if anybody has any questions, just pop them in the chat box, or there's also a questions section. Either of those is fine.
It's always, I need to get my like Jeopardy music or something to go through, you know, when we switch over to the Q&A class. I'll get the Q&A at the end. Yeah, I actually got through, that actually went through, what are we at? We're at 35. Yeah, that went actually a little bit faster than I thought. I was a little worried because it was like 35 slides and I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be forever. But, you know, I try to keep it kind of light for these things. And I don't want to bog everybody down with the speeds and feeds. If you do take the ICX 150 class, you'll get plenty of the speeds and feeds because that content, unfortunately, is not written by me. It's written by the education department, and they go into the details of every model of every family. And it's like, I always joke, I think sometimes they got paid by per slide when they were writing content. So load those things up, which is really why I do those fast tracks, is because I still try to kind of move through that pretty quick, right? And there's a lot of redundant stuff. So anybody that's attended one of those before knows that I kind of keep those things moving, you know, pretty quick and just get you the information that you need. And there's so much other stuff that they include in there that I don't think is always that beneficial. So
looks like we had a couple questions come in. Are there any labs for this tech training?
For these two here, we don't do them. I'm assuming they're talking about the ICX 150 and the RASA. So technically we have labs, yes. When we did these classes as in-persons, we would do labs. When we went to virtuals with COVID, we tried doing labs in the beginning, and it just got to be too hard to keep those things running smooth and relevantly remotely, right? Since you're not in front of the equipment, you know, like the RASA, for instance, when all the APs are at my house doing these labs remotely, the person doing them can't see anything. Like, so you're basically just in the GUI clicking a bunch of buttons and you don't know if anything happens. I have to go look and see if anything actually worked or not. So it just didn't seem to be that beneficial for doing them remotely. So we don't do any labs anymore for the virtual 150 and the RASA 200 class. If we do them on site, then we absolutely would have them on site. For the Disney Day ones, you obviously will have hands-on because we'll have all that equipment there for you to play with and go through.
Great, thanks. And then
and I'll just say that if you do take one of those virtuals, I'll be happy to provide you with that kind of those lab guides. There's a couple of them that are pretty good, especially on the ICX, how to walk through that stuff. So I do have those materials available that if you want a copy of it to go play with it yourself, you can, you know, so I have no problem giving those guides out. It's just that they just didn't end up working that well remotely. So.
Okay. Thanks. Next question. Is there any possibility of the compact 7150 going end of life soon?
No, not that I've heard, because we just released the 7150 C10 ZP. I know we've had a lot of, you know, constraint issues as far as products, like everybody has. So there's just it's been a hit or mix. But I will say that I've not seen any, and I'm on the SE committee that works with engineering. So we're talking about products, you know, a year and 2 years out that I can't obviously talk about on here, but I've not seen anything in those that talk about the 7150 compacts, which is going away, right? The things that I've looked at, like I mentioned before, is like the 7550s being a replacement for the 7450s, right? And then once the 7850 copper version hits in a couple weeks, I would expect that we'll then have a full replacement for the 77 family. So while we've not announced any kind of end of life, if you've been doing this as long as I have, you kind of know that once you get a full replacement family, it's only a matter of time before, you know, the guy that's being replaced it's going to get into sale. And when you look at the fact that like 7,700 families not supported in cloud, they're not supported past, I think, 8095 in fast iron. So they're not supported in the 9.0 code. That's just kind of all the hints, right? The writing on the wall. But that's the only one that I've seen that we would be getting close to at this point.
Okay, great. And it looks like that was the last question, so we can go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Anan. Keep an eye out for registration pages and emails about these upcoming events. And then you'll be getting a copy of the slides and a recording of the session today with a link to register if anybody's interested in the upcoming training. So thank you both so much and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.